I'm not here from a company, I'm just here personally, let's say it this way, and I want to give you some ideas what's kind of the state of DApps. And when I talk about DApps, I'm talking mostly about DApps which are running on the public blockchain. So, short about me, my name is Juergen Hoebarth. I'm originally Austrian. I live since 10 years now in Asia. I'm into blockchain since more than 4 years now. I have invested in funny crypto projects, more successfully or less successfully. I run 2 companies. I'm specialized in tokenization, not only in tokenization of assets, but think a little bit further, tokenization of passports, identity, artworks, ownerships. You name it, like your certificate you get at the university. And it's definitely still a long way to go when we talk about DApps. Okay, before we start, let's have a little bit of a look in history in mobile apps. So I think everyone can remember this scenario, 2008, and having a mobile phone. What you were doing mostly with the mobile phone was having calls and basically sending SMS. But then, like before 2008, something appeared which was called WAP, which was like a web-based standard to program small apps. And you had like a completely fragmented landscape. You had a lot of different operating systems, you had a lot of different phones, you had a lot of different sizes. But then we look like 10 years later, the market kind of cleared up. We have standards, we know how now apps are working, and basically there are 2 major, how to say this, standards like Android and iOS where apps are built on. And if you look in the blockchain space now, it's a completely mess, to be honest. And what is the good thing out of it? So great things take time. So we were seeing it took basically 10 years time to figure out how mobile apps are working. And imagine DApps are in the space theoretically less than 2 years, if you're really honest. I mean, if we take it completely seriously, Bitcoin on its own is a DApp, but it's not really a consumer-facing decentralized application. So to give an idea what, for my definition, a decentralized application is, because I think there is no official term now, everyone is just using other people's references. For me, I think you have to differentiate how apps are built, and you have something which is a user interface. And if it's a decentralized mobile or a web app, or if it's a standard mobile or web app, the user interface should in reality not be different. If we think now at the moment, it's completely different. Because we all know if you want to use a DApp, you need to use something like MetaMask, or you have a browser which is enabled to run Web 3.0 applications. But to be fair, centralized mobile apps, the core difference is basically the core business logic. It can be a token, but it should not be always the token. But the core business logic of the app should be written in a smart contract and should work with protocols, and they are interlinked with the blockchain, versus in a centralized mobile app or in an app, functions, SDKs, which is built on a centralized server, they're hosted on a centralized server. So what is happening now and why does it count? So what is happening now, if you look into the public blockchain space, there are 3 blockchains which most of you people know, Ethereum, EOS, and Tron. And those are the most of the DApps which are out there in terms of number are built on one of those 3 blockchains. So if we look into statistics, what's the market at the moment? How heavily are DApps used? So any one of you has an idea how many monthly users MetaMask has? So I'm assuming everyone knows MetaMask. So it's that tool you need in the browser to be able to interact with DApps. And in reality, only 200,000 unique users per month. MetaMask is basically one of the main tools you're using to work with DApps. Or everyone remembers, for example, CryptoKitties, which is considered to be a DApp, but in reality, only around 250 people are using it a day. You see the numbers are like really, really very low. And if you look what DApps are popular, and particularly if you look on Ethereum, there are two kinds of services popular, but mostly if you talk about Ethereum, DApps are popular in the decentralized finance space. You have something like Maker and DAI to use a stablecoin. You have then different exchanges or protocols which provide like hidden exchanges, and then you have definitely decentralized exchanges. But there's not really anything useful built on it, like a social network or anything. If you look on EOS, it's a little bit more crazy. It's all about gambling. That's completely clear, to be honest, because all of those sites, we are not so sure how legit the persons are who are behind it. Most of these gambling apps are used in countries where gambling is regulated, but if you build a decentralized gambling app, no one can really push your funds away or basically lock you. Most of these companies or these apps are even not real companies. They are just smart contracts or programs who are running, and people are using them. In another area is also too, like, because EOS is its own blockchain, and they need also to exchanges, so exchanges is also to a use case where basically decentralized apps are used. On Tron is the same story. And Tron is basically, I call it a little bit of a gambling blockchain. And it's heavily, I don't know if everyone knows the story about Tron, it's not really Chinese, despite everyone thinks it's Chinese. It's just run by some Chinese, but technically the company is incorporated in Singapore. But all the apps they are using is basically used by people in China to do gambling stuff. And this needs to be aware. But to think back, how did the internet start? In the beginning, it was two industries which were big, and one of them was also the gambling industry. So it seems like it's a little bit of an adoption cycle, and in reality, gaming and gambling is something which normally tries to pick up always new technologies. So as I said before, we have kind of problems at the moment at the actual state with DApps. So to use a DApp at the moment, you need to implement in your browser, if you use Chrome, you need to download an additional plugin, which is, for example, MetaMask or some other plugins for other chains. So you need to imagine, you need to have the specific plugin for each blockchain you would like to interact with. It's completely unpractical. Then, to be honest, most DApps are built by developers. And don't get me wrong, developers don't care about usability. Developers don't care about user experience. It's like more or less, if you think back in the computer ages, in the early days, an app was built in MS-DOS, in QBasic. It looked horrible. It was not usable for the average user. And when I talk about an average user, it should be my parents, it should be my sister, it should be my cousins, which have no understanding how technology works, but they understand how to download an app in the App Store and pay for it. And most DApps, from my perspective at the moment, they get over-decentralized. Means they try to decentralize everything. I mean, we know like Algor, for example, the prediction protocol, everything is decentralized. The code, the decisions, and as we know, there's a downside to decentralization. You need to have consensus, and to find consensus takes a lot of time. And to be honest, who of you cares here to use a decentralized app? Be honest. Who is caring that Facebook is really storing your data? Okay, a couple of people, obvious ones. But I'm assuming the general consumer doesn't care, oh, we are building now the Twitter for decentralized Twitter. That's not a sales argument to the users to board on. And it's basically, for your understanding, it's basically no one cares that you're hosting your web service on AWS. So if you say to your consumer, oh, I'm hosting my app on AWS, it doesn't drive adoption. So, but that is basically what is now. But we have also to talk about what's going on in the future. And in the future, we are seeing already movements, and it's very interesting. There's, for example, Opera. It's a browser which is known but not well adopted. And they have already natively integrated a solution that you can interact with Web 3.0 applications. There's also another one, it's called Lynx. It's an app. Basically, it's a mobile which has a decentralized browser integrated in the wallet system. Then, if you look, for example, if you talk about user experience, there are like 2 apps I'm knowing. It's like one is like Mosendo. It's trying to make the onboarding of people how to interact with stablecoins, or for example with DAI in a very convenient way. So they have a way, it's usable for my mom, it's usable for everyone else without any additional knowledge in terms of technology. For example, 8Pay, they're solving payment things. You know, if you pay something on the blockchain, it's a little bit complicated to do it with QR codes, but there's no user interface that the normal person who runs a web shop could really facilitate proper crypto payments. And then, which is the most interesting space at the moment, is the gaming space. And in the gaming space, there are different players which are using something. So they figured out, I don't know, like NFTs, it's a non-fungible tokens. It's basically digital items on the blockchain. And what they do, they completely decentralize that part. And for example, Sandbox is a company which is like Minecraft, and all their assets which you can use in the game, they're completely fully decentralized. And they're in a way decentralized that the user experience is not broken. Blankos is like a little jump and run game where also to the main character is completely decentralized. You can customize him, you can do stuff with him. Or Skyweaver is something like Hearthstone, a very popular card game online. And there you really own the cards. So basically other people could use these cards as well because you own them on the blockchain and build other games on top. You can trade them peer-to-peer. You don't need to run through a centralized system. So to conclude everything, so where are basically we now? I think before 2008, DApps were everything about gambling. I think now, like the next year, 2020, we are coming in this direction where gaming and financing finds ways how to use DApps and basically make them usable for everyone else. And I'm assuming DApps mass adoption should have somewhere around the next 5 years. Because as we learned from recent cycles to adoption get always shorter. Yeah, thank you very much. You can follow me, and any questions?
So what do you do?
What I'm doing?
Yes, because you said that you have a couple of
let's say
companies.
This way. I do a little bit of research and trying to find out how things are working. I'm personally helping companies to get exactly that part right. So how your DApp, how your integration of blockchain makes it happen that average person is using it.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Any other question?
Thank you for being here. Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm not familiar with DApps as much as I should, although it looks very interesting. But from what I understand, we're way, way back. How long do you anticipate that we're going to reach some kind of a place that DApps are available and at a user kind of interface level that is usable by your sister, as you said, or your mom?
I'm assuming so. Like by end of next year, there are some games which are coming out where we assume that the games will get attention in the terms of millions. So because if we talk now about DApps, we talk about DApps. They have 9,000 users a day. That's nothing. So we really need to have this kind of success stories. And for the average user, it will be even not seeable that there is a major part decentralized.
Isn't Voice supposed to be coming out on EOS this year?
Sorry?
Isn't Voice supposed to be coming out on EOS this year?
Yes, Voice should come out 2020. I'm personally disappointed by EOS that they just come out with a decentralized social network.
You're disappointed?
Yes, because it doesn't make any sense. So it doesn't make any sense in terms of getting mass adoption because it's only, I call them fanatics will use it, but I'm not thinking, you know, like social media is done. There's no new social network coming. We know how it works. It's a little bit like if you try to disrupt like the search space, Google is done. Social media is done.
Sure, on Zuckerberg's mind, maybe.
Yes, basically he wants to venture into blockchain and the blockchain space wants to venture into social media company. Completely ridiculous, but that's my personal opinion.
I have a question. So you mentioned in your presentation you've shown the 3 leading blockchains.
Yeah.
Obviously one of them, Ethereum is like far ahead. I just wanted to know what your thought is on how the different blockchains are going to evolve over the
It
next?
depends what you define far ahead. So all of the three chains, so Tron is basically a clone of Ethereum
Right.
with some adoption, and EOS has certain problems in terms of you have to fund your accounts. But in
Exactly.
their recent updates, they made it that you can give this gas to the users. So the user doesn't have to have gas on the address.
If, for example, if a new project you're starting for, let's say next year, and maybe you're doing it for a client, you want to present the options, would you recommend one over the other, or is there just
I
one
would,
direct?
it's a case by case. So if you
Okay.
do something in the NFT space, or the non-fungible token space, the ecosystem is larger in Ethereum. But if you do specific use cases, EOS maybe makes more sense for you.
Got it. Thank you.
Because EOS has an easier naming system than complicated addresses.
So, thank you very much once again.